Imagine. You close your eyes for what feels like the last time, your world fades to black. But what if that wasn't the end? What if, instead of fading into oblivion, you were embarking on a journey? A journey not through space but through time itself. You are put on pause, a silent passenger traveling toward an unknown future. A future where the disease that ended your life is a distant memory, a footnote in medical history books. A future where technology has advanced beyond our wildest dreams. This is not the plot of a science fiction movie. This is the promise of cryonics. It's a bold, audacious idea. Some call it the ultimate expression of hope. Others call it the ultimate folly. The desire to overcome death is as old as our species. It's woven into our myths, our religions, and our art. We've searched for fountains of youth and elixirs of life. We've told stories of gods and heroes who cheat the final curtain. But in the modern age, this ancient quest has taken a new technological form. We look to science, not magic, for salvation. Cryonics represents a radical shift in how we view the boundary between life and death. It redefines death, not as an absolute endpoint, but as a process that, its proponents believe, might one day be reversible. It's a breathtaking gamble, a bet placed on the ingenuity of generations yet to come. This idea challenges our most fundamental assumptions. It forces us to ask profound questions. What does it mean to be alive? Where does our identity reside? Is it in the intricate web of neurons firing in our brain? Is it in the memories that shape our personality? Or is it something more, something science cannot yet measure? The journey into the frozen unknown is more than a medical procedure. It is a philosophical odyssey. It's a testament to the human spirit's relentless drive to explore, to understand, and to transcend our limitations. We reached for the moon. We mapped the human genome. Now some of us are reaching for a second chance at life itself. So let's embark on our own journey of discovery. Let's travel into the cold, quiet world of cryonics. We will explore the science, the history, and the human stories behind this extraordinary endeavor. We will weigh the hopes against the immense challenges. We will consider the profound ethical and philosophical questions it raises. We are venturing to the very edge of what is known, to the frontier where biology, technology, and belief converge. Prepare yourself. The story of cryonics is a story about the future, about the nature of humanity, and about the cosmic audacity of a species that dares to dream of cheating death. Let's be clear, when we talk about cryonics, we are not talking about freezing people like a side of beef. That's a common misconception, fueled by cartoons and old movies, and it's crucial to distinguish it from a similar-sounding word, cryogenics. Cryogenics is the science of very low temperatures and how materials behave in those conditions. It's used in things like MRI machines and rocket fuel. Cryonics, on the other hand, is the speculative medical practice of preserving humans and animals at extremely low temperatures. The core idea is that a person who is declared legally dead today might not be truly, information theoretically dead. The hope is to pause the dying process, protecting the body's structure until future technology can repair the damage and revive them. The entire premise of cryonics rests on a modern understanding of death. For most of human history, death was simple. When the heart stopped beating and the lungs stopped breathing, you were gone. But we now know it's more complicated. Medical science can restart a heart that has stopped. We define death today as the irreversible cessation of brain function. Cryonicists take this a step further. They argue that even irreversible is relative to our current technology. They believe that the essential information that makes you you, your memories, your personality, is stored in the physical structure of your brain. If that structure can be preserved, they argue, then perhaps you can be brought back. This is a profound departure from traditional thinking. Cryonics treats legal death not as an event, but as the beginning of an emergency medical procedure. The goal is not to bring someone back to life with today's medicine, which is impossible. The goal is to act as a bridge to the future. It's like placing a patient in a time capsule. They are not considered dead, but cryopreserved patients in a state of stasis. They are waiting for a rescue that may be centuries away. This is why cryonics organizations often refer to themselves as providing a form of medical transport, delivering patients from a time of limited technology to a time of far greater capability. So, in essence, cryonics is an ambulance to the future. It's a high-stakes bet that the progress of science will not stop. Proponents see it as the logical extension of emergency medicine, from CPR to defibrillators. It's one more tool in the fight against the finality of death. Critics, however, see it as pseudo-science, a fantasy sold to the desperate. They argue that the damage caused by the preservation process itself is far too great to ever be repaired. Before we can judge, we must first understand how this audacious idea came to be and the journey a person takes into the frozen abyss. The dream of suspended animation has been with us for a long time, but the scientific story of cryonics begins in the 20th century. Its intellectual father is a man named Robert Ettinger. He was a college physics teacher who, in 1962, self-published a book that would change everything: The Prospect of Immortality. Ettinger's argument was elegantly simple. He reasoned that any person frozen with today's technology, even if it caused some damage, had a chance of being revived by the far more advanced technology of the future. A person who was buried or cremated, however, had a 0% chance. For Ettinger, the choice was obvious. His book became the founding text of the cryonics movement. The idea caught fire in the minds of a small but dedicated group of futurists and scientists. The first human to be cryopreserved was Dr. James Bedford, a psychology professor. In January 1967, shortly after his death from kidney cancer, his body was cooled and placed in a container of liquid nitrogen. His preservation was crude by today's standards, a pioneering experimental effort. Yet, remarkably, Dr. Bedford's body remains preserved to this day at the Alcor Life Extension Foundation in Arizona. He is a silent monument to the movement's beginnings, a patient waiting for a future that was only imagined when his journey began. His preservation marked the transition of cryonics from a theoretical idea to a real-world practice. The early years of cryonics were turbulent, a Wild West era filled with enthusiasm but also with technical failures and financial instability. Several early cryonics organizations failed, and the patients they were responsible for were tragically lost. These failures were devastating, but they also provided harsh lessons. The remaining groups learned that long-term stability was just as important as the initial preservation procedure. They began to establish more robust financial structures like patient care trusts, designed to protect the funds needed to maintain the patients indefinitely. This was a critical evolution, moving from a hobbyist-level operation to a more professional, long-term endeavor. Over the decades, the science has slowly advanced. The early method of straight freezing, which caused massive damage from ice crystal formation, has been replaced. A new process called vitrification was developed. This process uses cryoprotectant chemicals, essentially a kind of medical-grade antifreeze, to cool the body into a glass-like amorphous state without forming damaging ice crystals. This was a major leap forward, dramatically improving the structural preservation of the brain and body. While the road has been long and fraught with challenges, the pioneers of cryonics laid the groundwork for the modern practice, turning a speculative dream into a tangible, albeit controversial, reality. What actually happens when someone chooses to be cryopreserved? The process is a race against time. It must begin as close to the moment of legal death as possible. The enemy is decay, specifically the decay of the brain. The first step is to stabilize the patient. A standby team, often waiting nearby during the final days of a person's life, immediately begins cardiopulmonary support. They circulate oxygenated blood to keep the brain and organs viable. The body is rapidly cooled using an ice bath and specialized cooling blankets. This slows down the metabolic processes and the rate of tissue degradation, buying precious time for the more complex steps to follow. Next comes the most critical phase, the replacement of blood and water with cryoprotectant agents. This is where the magic, or rather, the advanced biochemistry, happens. The team performs a procedure similar to what's done during open-heart surgery. They access the patient's major blood vessels and begin to circulate a series of solutions. First, they wash out the blood, then they gradually introduce a concentrated mixture of chemicals. These cryoprotectants are designed to prevent the formation of ice crystals, which act like microscopic shards of glass, shredding cells from the inside out. The goal is not to freeze the patient, but to vitrify them. Vitrification is the key. As the concentration of cryoprotectants increases and the temperature drops, the body's tissues don't crystallize. Instead, they become a solid glass-like substance. This process preserves the fine structure of the cells, including the delicate neural connections in the brain that hold a person's memories and identity. Once the perfusion is complete, the patient is further cooled over several days using computer-controlled chambers. They are slowly brought down to the temperature of liquid nitrogen, a mind-bogglingly cold -196 degrees Celsius, or -321 degrees Fahrenheit. At this temperature, all metabolic and chemical activity effectively stops. The patient is, for all intents and purposes, frozen in time. Finally, the vitrified patient is placed into their long-term home, a large, vacuum-insulated container called a dewaar. These dewars are like giant thermos flasks. They are filled with liquid nitrogen and don't require any electricity to maintain their cold temperature. This is a crucial design feature for long-term stability. The liquid nitrogen slowly boils off and must be topped up periodically, but the system is passive and robust against power failures. Inside this silent, frigid vessel, the patient waits. Their biological clock has stopped. They are now passengers on the longest, coldest journey imaginable, waiting for a dawn that may or may not ever come. Preserving a body is one thing. Reviving it is another challenge entirely. A mountain of obstacles so high it borders on the impossible with today's technology. The first major hurdle is reversing the vitrification process itself. Warming the body up is just as dangerous as cooling it down. It must be done perfectly evenly to avoid fractures caused by thermal stress. Then, the cryoprotectant solution, which is toxic at warmer temperatures, must be safely flushed out and replaced with a life-sustaining fluid. This process alone would require technologies we can only dream of. It's a problem of immense biochemical and engineering complexity, but let's assume we solve that. The next challenge is repairing the damage. Even with vitrification, some damage is inevitable. There is damage from the disease or injury that caused the person's death in the first place. There is damage from the lack of oxygen between legal death and the start of the procedure. And there is the subtle, molecular-level damage from the preservation process itself. Future medicine would need to be able to repair this damage on a cellular level across the entire body. This would likely involve swarms of nanorobots, microscopic machines that could swarm through the bloodstream, repairing cells, reconnecting neurons, and curing the original cause of death. Then we come to the brain. This is the ultimate frontier. Is the information that constitutes a person's consciousness, their memories, their very self, still intact? Neuroscience tells us that our identity is encoded in the pattern of connections between our neurons, the connectome. Cryonics is a bet that vitrification preserves this connectome with enough fidelity to be readable and repairable. But we don't yet know what enough means. Would a revived person be themselves, or just a hollow copy? Would their memories be jumbled, fragmented, or gone entirely? The question of whether consciousness can be rebooted from a preserved physical structure remains one of the deepest mysteries in science. Revival is therefore not a single event but a cascade of futuristic technologies working in perfect harmony. It requires mastery over biology at the molecular level. It requires nanotechnology far beyond our current capabilities. It requires a complete understanding of the brain and consciousness. Cryonicists are not just hoping for a cure for cancer or old age, they are hoping for a complete technological revolution, a future where medicine can rebuild a human being from the bottom up. It's a vision of breathtaking scope, an admission that the rescue they hope for will have to come from a civilization far more advanced than our own. Who are the people who make this incredible choice? They are not a single uniform group. They are a diverse collection of individuals united by a shared belief in technology and a profound desire to live longer. Many are scientists, engineers, and computer programmers. People like futurist Ray Kurzweil, who see cryonics as a logical step on the path toward radical life extension. They are comfortable with technological speculation and tend to view the human body as a complex machine that can be repaired and upgraded. For them, cryonics isn't about faith in the supernatural. It's about faith in the predictable march of scientific progress. Another significant group is driven by a more personal, emotional motivation, the fear of separation and loss. Many people sign up for cryonics with their family members. They cannot bear the thought of being separated from their loved ones by death. By choosing to be preserved together, they hope to one day be revived together, continuing their lives and relationships in a new era. This perspective highlights the deeply human element of cryonics. It's not just about abstract ideas of immortality, but about the fundamental human need for connection and the desire to hold on to the people we love. It transforms the cold clinical procedure into an act of familial devotion. There are also those who are simply fascinated by the future. They are adventurers at heart, pioneers who want to see what comes next. They are not necessarily afraid of death, but they are brimming with curiosity about the world of tomorrow. What will humanity achieve in 500 years? Will we travel to the stars? Will we merge with artificial intelligence? For these individuals, cryonics is the ultimate ticket to the greatest show in the universe, the future. They are willing to take the enormous risk for the chance to witness the next chapters of the human story. They are the modern-day explorers, charting a course not across an ocean, but across the vast expanse of time. Of course, choosing cryonics requires a certain amount of financial resources. A whole body preservation can cost hundreds of thousands of dollars. A neuropreservation, where only the head is preserved, is a less expensive option. Most people fund their arrangements through life insurance policies, making it more accessible than one might think. But ultimately, the people who choose cryonics, the cryonauts, are defined not by their wealth, but by their mindset. They are optimists, they are planners. They are people who look at the finality of death and say, maybe not. They are betting everything on a future they will never see unless their gamble pays off. Cryonics is not just a scientific experiment, it's also a business. And it's a business unlike any other because its service agreement is meant to last for centuries or even longer. This raises a monumental question. Can any company truly be trusted to last that long? History is littered with the ruins of powerful corporations and even empires that lasted for a few hundred years at most. How can a cryonics organization promise to safeguard its patients for potentially thousands of years? This is one of the most serious and practical challenges facing the movement. The stability and longevity of the cryonics providers are paramount. To address this, the major cryonics organizations like Alcor and the Cryonics Institute have developed specific legal and financial structures. The money paid for the preservation itself is separate from the money intended for long-term care. The long-term care funds, often from life insurance payouts, are placed into a legally separate entity called a patient care trust. The idea is that this trust's assets are invested, and the returns are used to pay for the ongoing costs, such as liquid nitrogen, facility maintenance, and staffing. The principle is meant to be left untouched, allowing the fund to hopefully grow and endure indefinitely, protecting the patients even if the parent company were to face financial trouble. However, this model is not without its risks. It relies on the long-term stability of the economy and financial markets. A catastrophic economic collapse could wipe out the trust funds. It also relies on the integrity and competence of the people managing the trust for generations to come. What happens when the founders are gone? Who will ensure the mission is carried on with the same dedication? These are not easy questions. The organizations are governed by boards of directors, often made up of members who are themselves signed up for cryopreservation, creating a strong vested interest in the long-term success of the enterprise. Furthermore, there are the immense legal gray areas. Cryopreserved individuals exist in a state of legal limbo. They are declared legally dead, so they have no rights. Their estate is settled, and their assets are distributed. The contract for their care is held between the organization and the trust, not the patient themselves. What if laws change in the future? What if a future society decides that maintaining these corpses is a waste of resources? The promise of cryonics is not just a technological one, it is also a social and legal one. It requires a stable civilization that continues to honor the wishes of people from a distant past. When we strip away the science and the finance, cryonics presents us with a profound philosophical choice. It is the ultimate gamble, a wager placed on the future of humanity. On one side lies the potential for a second chance, for more life, more experiences, more time with loved ones. It's an expression of the deepest human instinct, the will to live. It embodies a powerful optimism, a faith that our descendants will be not only more capable but also more compassionate, that they will care enough to rescue strangers from the past. This hope is a powerful force, a light against the darkness of oblivion. But on the other side lies the potential for hubris. Is it arrogant to assume that future generations will want to revive us? Or that they will have the resources to do so? Perhaps they will have their own problems, their own priorities. There is also the critique from many religious perspectives. Many faiths teach that death is a natural and necessary part of a divine plan, a transition to a spiritual afterlife. To them, cryonics can seem like an attempt to usurp the role of God, a refusal to accept our place in the natural order. It raises questions about the nature of the soul. If a person is revived, Is it the same person, the same soul that returns? Let's imagine the possible outcomes. The best-case scenario is full success. A person is revived, healthy, whole, and with their memories intact. They awaken in a future that has conquered disease and aging. It's a second life, a dream come true. Then there is the possibility of partial success. Perhaps the revival works, but the person's memories are damaged, their personality altered. They are alive, but they are not quite who they were. Or maybe they are revived into a world that is not a utopia, but a dystopia they cannot comprehend. The worst case, of course, is total failure. The preservation method proves to be fundamentally flawed, the damage too great to ever repair. The long sleep is simply a prelude to an irreversible end. In the end, the choice comes down to a single, powerful question. It's a question that stares back at us from the cold, silent depths of the liquid nitrogen. It asks us to weigh our hopes against our fears, our optimism against our skepticism. It forces us to confront our own mortality and what we value most about our existence. If you were given the chance, a slim chance to see the future, to experience life again, would you take it? Would you close your eyes and place your trust in the hands of generations yet unborn? Would you choose to be frozen in time hoping for a second chance?